Hello, it's Horace here. It's been a minute since I've made a video, and today I have kind of a unique little. I don't know if you call this like advice or like maybe more of like an opinion thing, and that's talking about school. Now, specifically public school, the public school system. Um, and I'm also going to be, talking about my experiences in the public school system in Canada. So I imagine it's probably not far off from most other Western countries, especially like Anglosphere countries. Our education systems are more or less all based on the same kind of ideas. Obviously, there's going to be variation, but yeah. Now, I want to say that public school actually can be a great thing. Obviously, if you are currently in high school or whatever, you should like do as well as you can. Especially if you're young and you don't really have like anything else going on. Like if you don't really have like a way, or even you don't really have like a way in. Like if you don't have a family business, if you don't have any ideas, you know what I mean, to make money or to kind of like what to do with your future, you should actually try your best in high school because, in my opinion, and I think people would agree, high school can be a great practice round. Like school allows you to kind of experiment with what it's like to have, tasks you need to get done, deadlines, projects. It's like school is kind of like, it's meant to get you ready for life in neoliberal capitalism and life as a wage slave. But it can also be, just like a training method to kind of, maybe for you to help like find what you want to do. Obviously, if you have good teachers, that helps. I had some good teachers, and I also had some kind of not good teachers. Um, and in my experience, I was one of these kids where I was a little bit of like I was kind of a dorky kid, and I'm gonna be honest, I was pretty quiet in high school, and I was never like I had a sense of humor, but I was never a class clown. Like I never acted out like wacky type kind of shit, even though there were times where I wanted to, and there were times where I could have, right? So for the most part, there were actually teachers that liked me. Like when I hear stories from other people, I think other people have experienced way worse shit than I have. And I want to make it clear that I went to a really shitty school. And there were teachers, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about teachers that some of the ones I didn't like or who were weird. But in general, like I would say the staff I felt bad for a lot of them. Like a lot of them, they seemed like they didn't really know how to like manage the classroom. Like I had a math teacher in freshman year, and she was this like 4'11", or maybe she was like 5 feet 5'1", Pakistani woman, and she would just get completely like I don't even know how to explain it. She just had no defense. Like when the kids in that class, because also I want to make it clear that math has always been my worst subject, and I was in an applied math class. And if you've ever taken applied classes or whatever the equivalent is where you live, like lower tier, you know that the type of kids that end up in those classes are borderline retarded and, just extremely like fucking annoying and disobedient. So, you know, when it came to this woman, she didn't really know what the fuck to do. And then there was also other ones. Like I remember this, I had like an English teacher in junior year who was one of these like Richard Dawkins retards. Like I think he was like a Richard Dawkins fan. I remember one time we had like there was a class where he made us watch a YouTube video that was like fucking, sorry, I don't even know what the name of the channel was. It was like some kind of weird like skeptic channel with like a British guy with long hair like debunking PragerU. It was like the gayest shit ever. And by the way, obviously fuck PragerU and fuck Israel and all that, but like it just felt very like neckbeard coded to be like, oh yeah, man, like that's kind of like low hanging fruit, you know what I mean? But yeah, this English teacher, and he was also like one of these guys who was obsessed with Trump and constantly ranting about fascism, and it was annoying. Like this guy was just like an annoying like Gen X, or he might have been a boomer actually. I think he was a boomer, younger boomer, one of these like boomer liberal kind of, never really became like a full on lefty. Like maybe he read like Noam Chomsky, like maybe he read Manufacturing Consent, but like even he was like the type of guy who was too lame to like even like the fucking like college commies didn't want to hang out with him. One of those type of like progressives. And obviously like not to generalize, but this guy was obnoxious. Like I have my views, you have yours. But if you're a public school teacher, people are gonna judge you, like regardless of your viewpoints. If you're like making it super duper biased and super duper one sided in every issue, no matter what. But yeah, so that was interesting. I also had a teacher who she was like a really, really heavy duty feminist. And like, she was like raised by like a single mother, and like her dad was a deadbeat, and like, it was like all the classic stereotypes. And obviously, like, we all know that public schools are, like, super longhouse and super, like, authoritarian in the way they are, like, the way they're structured. Like I said, there are definitely good things about public school, but you also have to understand that public school is essentially, like, intended for obedience. It's meant to make you obedient. It's meant to make you into a person who's easy to control. That's just a fact. Like, the way it's structured, there's obviously there's a lot of comparisons that people from various different sides of the political spectrum have made this argument that public schools are kind of like prison. You have to ask when to use the bathroom. You have to ask, when's class over? When can I leave? You eat lunch at a certain time. There's all this stuff, and it is like, it's like prison in a way. Public school is essentially, it's your little introduction to what authority is, to essentially the cathedral. Public school, like everything in life, like, if you have a country's president, that president is like the principal. And, cops are kind of like teachers. But at the same time, I would argue that like, media figures in general are like teachers. Like whenever you talk to certain people that are like super duper, I don't know, like bought into the system, they all have this like public school morality, I guess. I don't really know what else to call it. Like people that are, especially more of a millennial thing, but you'll see it with different generations. People that watch like Jimmy Kimmel or John Oliver, like this sort of like public school morality, this like teacher's pet vibe, right? Like there's a certain type of person, if these guys or these people, it can be women or men that are just fucking teacher's pets, and you can tell. Like you can just tell that these kids, their teachers loved them because they always were obedient. They always said the right things. It's a certain type of person that I've definitely met, that you've met, who's a conformist, who is afraid to push boundaries, afraid to question the system. And, like I said, ultimately that's up to you. That's a decision. But these are people that will also try to claim to be like rebels or try to claim to be different or whatever. And yet, they have views that, literally every public school teacher would agree with, HR departments, Fortune 500 companies would agree with, billionaire owned propaganda outlets agree with them. And yet they claim to be rebellious. It's complete nonsense. It's the opposite. These people are actually conformists. They're actually the ultimate supporters of the Leviathan or like I said, the system, whatever you want to call it. This is becoming kind of unhinged, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say, right? The system is designed for a reason. The system and public school is a big part of that, and then of course, the other thing with public school is, being at a school that just sucks. Like I went to a school that was really, I don't even know, man. It was, by the standards of the area I lived in, my school was considered like the ghetto school in my suburb. Compared to other schools in like the real ghetto, obviously I'm not saying it was that bad, but it was still like, it wasn't great. Like my school had stabbings. My school had fights all the time. My school had, drug deals. My school had there was in my senior year, a guy brought a gun to school. And there was a whole, like, we had to do like a lockdown and shit. It was, all of that. And I would also say that there was a general like aura of like uncertainty. And, I want to talk more about my high school in the future, just because I think it's an interesting subject. But yeah, this was sort of meant to be like a little, short little thing. It ended up going longer than I thought it was. But yeah, public school is a humiliation ritual, and you should still graduate and stuff. You should still work hard, but just be aware of what's going on. Anyways, thank you for watching. If you like this video, subscribe, leave a like, comment if you want to, and bye.